Hey gamers, Blindy here. It's December 2024, and I just knocked NieR Automata Game of the Yorha Edition off my backlog. And before I go any further, I just quickly want to mention that I passed the 1 year mark creating videos on this channel. So thank you to everyone that watched any amount of my content. It really means a lot. Where was I? Oh, right. So, are there any games that you feel you're supposed to like because everyone else seems to really like it? Off the top of my head, I get that feeling from the Persona games, or Metaphor ReFantazio, or heck, anything that Atlas releases. Those games always seem to have review scores in the 90s, everyone raves about them, and it feels like you're supposed to like them because that's what everyone else is doing. Or anything that Hideo Kojima creates, including all his Metal Gear games, or Death Stranding, or whatever other crap he's got cooking in the oven. So, where am I going with this? Right. I get a bit of that feeling with the NieR games. I mean, not to the same extent. It's like Persona and Metal Gear are paving ground that NieR is following, but it's almost as if I'm supposed to love the revolutionary take that this game creates for action RPGs. And does it live up to my imaginary hype this game seems to have? Well, no, but that's too simplistic of a take. As with any good review, there's a lot to like and dislike, and I'll cover as much of it as I can. And if I do my job correctly, we'll have a pretty good idea at the end of this review how this game stacks up. Platinum Games developed NieR Automata. You may recognize their name from the Bayonetta series, or Astral Chain, The Wonderful 101, or Babylon's Fall. Okay, maybe not so much Babylon's Fall, but for sure Bayonetta. This was Platinum Games' only kick at the can for the NieR series so far, but it is the most recent game in the series, so you never know. Maybe they'll be working on the next entry in the series. Another game hasn't been announced yet, and it's possible Platinum Games could be at the helm again if they do. So we'll just have to wait and see. And given that Automata sold over 8 million copies, I'd be surprised if they didn't try to tap into that well just a bit more. Now, there are some interesting parallels with the Persona series. Persona is a spin-off series of Shin Megami Tensei. The Persona games spun off after a few Shin Megami Tensei games were released, and both series continued on afterward. And even with the Persona history of its main 5 titles, they've had other spin-offs and releases. As for NieR, it spun off from the Drakengard series in a similar manner. There have been 2 games, with one being a re-release. For those of you keeping track, NieR Replicant version 1.22 something something blah 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 is a remaster of NieR Replicant. Not to be confused with NieR Gestalt, which is the other original NieR game along with NieR Replicant, but you know what? This is getting way too confusing to continue on. I played Automata, which is the sequel to Replicant. Let's just go with that. Freaking ridiculous. At least it's not Kingdom Hearts level of difficulty to explain. Automata originally released on February 23rd, 2017 for the PlayStation 4 and Windows, and is now available on the Xbox One and Switch as well. Again, I played this game on my LCD Steam Deck, and if you're looking to purchase this game for yourself, you can find it on Steam for $53.50 Canadian, but I'd wait for a sale. You can find it pretty frequently at 60% off, putting it at just over $21. It's rated as playable on the Steam Deck, and for the most part I would say it's pretty much verified with one significant exception. I had a major issue trying to get my name typed out in the game. One point to note, I generally play in desktop mode on my Steam Deck so that I can record my gameplay. And I know there's now a recording mode for the Steam Deck, but it's just not that good, unfortunately. So the problem I had was that I can't use the keyboard in-game when I'm in desktop mode. So when the game asked me to input my character's name, I had to exit the game, go into gaming mode, and try the game again without recording just to put my name in. So for most of you, it won't be a problem. Or maybe it might, because the other problem I had was that I couldn't use the keyboard in gaming mode either. To clarify, the keyboard comes up which it doesn't do in desktop mode, but I couldn't type anything. I tried navigating the keyboard with buttons, I tried typing using the touchscreen, I tried bringing up menus and all that just to see if anything would work, and for the most part, nothing worked for me. I almost nearly gave up when randomly it started to type. I don't have an explanation as for how it was resolved, so if you're struggling with the same issue, all I could say is that eventually it will work, but I don't have a step-by-step process as far as how it would work. Continuing on, you're recommended to have 50 gigs of space available, and my install had just over 40 gigs used. And my Steam Deck was able to push out about 1 to 1.5 hours worth of battery life for this game. I played this game on normal difficulty, and this was my second Platinum Games game that I had played. I previously played Bayonetta, and, well, I pretty much hated that game. This game, on the other hand, I didn't hate. It wasn't nearly as bad as Bayonetta, so it had the potential of being enjoyable. And a whole bunch of other people didn't hate this game either. Metacritic has this game in the mid-80s, and it looks to be about the same on Steam, with an 87% approval with over 99,000 reviews. And the ESRB rates this game as an M. There's blood and violence, as you might expect. There's partial nudity, most noticeably with Adam and Eve, and there's some strong language in this game as well. None of it is terrible, so even though it's rated as an M, I would say it's a pretty mild M. If you have a mature kid, they can handle this game, in my opinion. Before I continue on to the story and gameplay, just know that I will do my best not to discuss or show any spoilers, but I will not guarantee anything. It's possible I may say or show something at this point that you don't want me to reveal, so proceed at your own risk. Potential spoilers ahead. You play the game as the android 2B, and you get a lot of help from fellow android 9S, or Nines if he could have his way. The two of you are part of the same organization, a group that commands androids, called Yorha, which stands for, well, I'm pretty sure it doesn't stand for anything, to be honest. According to director Yoko Taro, Yorha is derived from the Japanese yoha, meaning passing leaf. What does that mean in terms of this game? I don't know. This game takes place far in the future, 11945 AD specifically. Humans have been dead for some time by this point, and an alien invasion of controlled machines start to take over Earth. Yorha's command begins to investigate various incidents and sends out 2B and 9S to resolve the issues that crop up. To be honest, it took me way too long to type up these last 2 paragraphs to describe the basic story of this game because it feels way too complicated to fully understand. I spent a lot of time staring at the Wikipedia page for this game to paraphrase what I understood the plot to be. Fortunately, you don't really need to know the plot all that well to play this game, so don't get hung up on the details. And, a small detail, if you're wondering what the heck is up with the blindfolds on these androids, apparently they are visors. Their vision isn't impaired, and I guess they're actually enhanced by the use of these visors, but ultimately, it's just an aesthetic choice. Alright, if you haven't figured it out by now by watching these clips, this game is an action role-playing game. I'll just get up on this soapbox briefly and just say that I think the term action RPG is a bit of a loose term. And as I think about it a bit more, I think it's that RPG is used way too frequently nowadays. Realistically, this game could easily be considered just an action game, but no, this has some small elements that make it RPG-like, so it's an action RPG. Ultimately, it's a third-person action game with melee and ranged attacks, some upgrading of skills and weapons, and basically a hack-and-slash style of combat. This game does mix up some of its styles though, which I found to be really cool. Mainly, there are a lot of areas where the world turns into a 2D side-scrolling or platforming style game, and you'll either be viewing the world from the side or maybe from the top, and you'll experience a part of the game that way. There are also sections where you fly around in mech suits, and the combat in those areas are more like arcade spaceship shooters, kind of like bullet hell style of games, but not to the same insane craziness that some of those games have you go through. On foot, in your regular 3D fighting, you will have a few ways to attack. You'll have a main melee weapon, which you might find some or purchase some, and you can place them in one of two quick select slots. I'm sure they provide some kind of use, but I never used the quick select slots for my weapons. I just used one loadout, and I was happy with that. Along with your melee weapon, you also have a pod with you, a flying robot that can be loaded with different options of useful skills. It starts out with a minigun, and later on you can get several other shooting abilities, such as homing missiles, and you will also use a tracking chip that allows you to track various objects. But, to be honest, I really only used the minigun starting weapon. I tried the missiles, but I found it frustrating to use and extremely underwhelming. With your melee weapon, you'll be able to do combos for more damage, but it kind of happens on its own, so you don't have to worry about little details like perfectly timing your strikes or anything like that. Basically, if your weapon has a 4 light attack combo, if you press your light attack 4 times, you'll swing your weapon that many times during the combo. Real easy. Same goes for the heavy attack combo. As far as your movement abilities, you can jump as you might expect. That can also be chained into a double jump. And you can dash, which can be used to chain into your jumps to jump higher and further to a limit. Also, the dash is a moment of invulnerability, so you can avoid attacks, and if you time a dodge perfectly, you can slow down time briefly and use that to your advantage. If you end up dying, you can go back to your fallen body and retrieve the items and its loadout. I never lost any items that way, mostly because this game is pretty easy to play and there aren't many dangers that aren't main bosses, unless you don't have an auto-heal chip installed. Speaking of chips, you can find chips, little circuit boards that have abilities installed on them. You have a limited amount of space for chips, so you can mix and match which abilities you want. It sounds like a cool system, and I really wanted this to be more impactful than it really was, but in actuality, it was kind of a ridiculous system. You can choose cool things like auto heal, like I've mentioned a couple times before. After 6 seconds, you start to heal a set percentage of your health per second. Awesome, right? Of course it is, but to fit it into your chip loadout, you may have to sacrifice other chips, which makes sense. So, what do you want to give up? Maybe it's seeing the enemy's health, or maybe you don't need to see your own health. Or you could sacrifice seeing how much damage you're dealing, or you could do without a mini-map. These are options for the chips you can use or not use, and there are lots more like that. So when it comes down to it, your useful, beneficial chips may take up a tiny amount of the space that you have available because you don't want to lose things like your OS chip. By the way, you need to have an OS chip installed, or else you die. At least you'll be able to upgrade the amount of storage space for your chips, but it just feels weird to have an option to get rid of things like your HUD text log. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the basic idea of the game. You're an android sent to Earth to investigate or clear out machines. You slash and swing your weapon, shoot at enemies, and wander around this small map. Now that I've set up the premise of the game, let's discuss some of my thoughts I had while playing this game. One of the biggest problems with this game is the beginning. Specifically, the introduction segment of this game. It's over half an hour long, it has a couple of challenging boss fights, and you can easily die. In fact, I did. I died during the tutorial section of this game. What that means is that you have to start the game completely over. There are no save sections, nowhere that you can go back to so you don't have to spend another half an hour doing the same things over again. Nothing like that. You die, you start from scratch. Frustrating is a mild term for that. But even after that, it felt like the first part of the game was slow. Perhaps it's better when you're into your second, third, or whatever playthrough, after you've gotten your bearings and understand the game more. Leveling up was slower than I thought, and I think I was only up to maybe level 5 at what I felt was about halfway through the game. But by the end, I was at about level 30. So it started off slow, and you're wandering around not sure what to do, And once you powered past some of the side quests and were able to focus on the main quests, things started to pick up from there. And once I was playing the main quests, I had a lot more fun. The game was focused, I knew where I needed to go and what I needed to be prepared, and overall, that part of the game was the best. I felt like I was strong, but still vulnerable, and I was going from one region to the next, and I wasn't wandering around trying to figure out what to do. The same can't be said for side quests. I think this is kind of a problem with any game though. Side quests just feel empty, like they're just busy work. There aren't too many games that have amazing side quests, though I will concede that there must be a few games out there that do. If you know of any, please let me know. I'm kind of curious. My first thought is Red Dead Redemption, or The Witcher, or the Grand Theft Auto games. But let's be honest, games like those would be outliers. And I haven't played most of those games, so I can't even say if the Red Dead Redemption or the Witcher games are like that or not. Maybe Baldur's Gate 3? I don't know. Anyway. That said, this game, for a fully complete run-through of the game, requires several playthroughs, with each run being a different story. I only ran through the game once, so in truth I am missing some of the game experience, which is fine by me. I liked the game enough to keep going until I got to the end once, but I didn't feel super compelled to do much more than that. Let's talk about the endings real quick. There are 26 endings in this game. Most of them are super quick endings that you get within the main story of the game, before the ending, but there are, I think, 5 main endings. So essentially the game wants you to run through the game 5 times to get the full story, with the other 21 endings being incidental endings. For example, I'll show you one of them here, just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So if you like playing around with different paths and finding ways to break a game, this game kind of encourages that kind of experimentation, which is really cool if you're enjoying playing this game quite a lot. But it doesn't require a ton from you if you, like me, aren't compelled to revisit this game more than just the one run. So it's really nice that it respects your time in that sense. And maybe I struggled a bit through the first playthrough, but it felt like the pacing was all over the place. Most of the action and combat felt great. The alternate gameplay styles, like I mentioned before, were awesome at changing things up, so things like the 2D sections and the mech shooter spots. And other parts of this game felt really slow. Lots of chatting with random characters that felt like they contributed nothing to the game, or looking around to find something that is on your map but isn't really there, and a few other times I found myself getting a little bored in the middle part of the game. Then I ignored talking to non-quest characters and things improved from there. But only talking to quest characters left this world feeling kind of empty. Kind of like the rest of this world. There are a few scattered enemies around, you'll find a random item on the ground, maybe a chest if you're lucky, but it felt like there wasn't a lot to experience other than walking through to get to your destination. It wasn't completely empty per se, but there was nothing worth stopping for while you head to your next destination. While the world is kind of sparse, you would think it would be easy to navigate, and moving around was fine, but trying to use the map was far from it. It could be moved in 3 dimensions, and you could spin your heading around, so it's super easy to get confused on which way you're going. And the map is built in low-res polygons, so you're not getting the definition you need to determine the correct way to go. All of the quest objectives are thrown on the map in 2D, so you have to point your cursor at each quest zone to see which quest it is for, and you can't tell if you need to be on the surface, or if there is some hidden underground world you need to explore to get to where you need to go, or if the stupid quest just doesn't work, like the Yorha Betrayer's quest did for me. You would hope that the minimap would be more useful, but nope, it really isn't. And you get no guidance whatsoever on which way will lead you to your destination other than a spot on the map. But with the world built like a maze in places, you might be going the right way, but you could definitely be going backward without realizing it. It's not game-breaking by any means, but it can seriously be frustrating, especially if you saved in the middle of finding a place that doesn't show up clearly in the map, only to come back a couple days later and be completely lost. At least there are a couple of options you can discover that can make travel easier. First, you can fast travel from terminal to terminal as long as they've been discovered. But using the map to determine where you should travel to is frustrating as well. Now, the map in the transport screen is merely a visual tool to show where the location is, but I frequently had to leave the transport screen, go into my map screen, find the name of the terminal I wanted to visit, then go back to the terminal to find the right place to transport to, then finally I'd be on my way. Again, not the end of the world, but it's something that could have been more friendly to use. And you can use certain items to ride creatures, which I never used because really, this map isn't that big. This isn't Oblivion where you can walk for 10 minutes without seeing anything. 30 seconds to a minute is your travel time for most trips, and assuming you don't stop to fight any machines along the way. Then it's like 2 minutes. And any sections that extend beyond that are visited once or twice, and that's about it. So areas like the flooded city or the copied city, they could have been used for more, but you're going to visit them, beat the area, and never return. It's too bad though, because these areas add some personality to the world, and it almost felt like they ran out of time or ideas to incorporate these sections more into the plot. At least I wasn't running around wasting my time. And this is following the main quest line. And while some games have amazing and worthwhile side quests, this game certainly does not. Sometimes a game is like that though. The side quests don't add anything to your enjoyment of the game. It's like they were added because you have to have side quests in a game like this. That's what the formula says to do. But how important is it to do side quests? In this game, I didn't find a strong enough benefit to keep pushing. So while I might have gained a couple levels or picked up some items, I didn't necessarily feel that I came out noticeably stronger than when I started. But it's even hard to follow the main quest line because it doesn't show up distinctly in the quest menu screen. It's just piled in with all the other quests you've got. Any indication to show that is the way to move forward would have been nice. A red dot, pin it to the top, indent it, I don't care. Just let me sort it out. You can't even highlight a quest, so you're unable to hide any quests from your map screen, meaning it's covered in red spots for all its highlighted quest locations. Because while for some people, focusing on the main quest line is their goal, there are many people that want to finish their side quests before moving on, and if they accidentally do a main quest, they might accidentally lock themselves out of completing something they wanted to work on. Other than the maps and quests not playing nicely though, I found the menu screens to all be decent at their job. In some action RPGs, you'll find that you'll pick up a ton of useless items, and this game really isn't an exception to that rule, but I did try to pick up everything, for 2 reasons. 1, there wasn't any significant penalty not to do so. You have an item limit per item, but at 99 of each item, it would be difficult to max those out, so I had plenty of room on hand. And second, you need various items to upgrade your weapons, so I just picked up everything in the hopes that they could be useful later. But other than upgrading weapons, I didn't use a lot of items. I used them to heal, especially early on, but once I had an auto heal, I used way fewer items. There were a ton of other items like strength and speed boosts and whatever else. I never used them. I suspect at harder difficulties they are way more helpful, but for me, not a lot of help. Now, you can sell items at the various shops, but I struggled with that as well because I didn't know which items would be used for upgrading my weapons, especially beyond the next upgrade. And you never know when the game might decide to crank up the challenge. But this one didn't. This game stayed pretty easy the entire way through. Wrapping up with a few more random thoughts, we get access to a room at the Resistance camp, but I don't know what the value is. I slept there once to heal up, but once again, with an auto heal chip, that is rendered completely useless. You can't do anything else in that room, so it became something I just ignored. There are a few places that you could take on various challenges. I did one, got beaten a few times, won a few items after I completed it, then abandoned it when I realized there were more challenges after that one. And lastly, this game, to my understanding, is essentially a standalone game. You don't have to have played any Drakengard game or the previous NieR game. This game is tied into those stories, but they are independent stories, so you're not missing anything in this game by not playing those games. So all that said, you might be wondering if I would recommend gamers to play Automata. Well, there are plenty of people that will love this game. There is a lot to explore, particularly when you replay it for the subsequent endings. If you like being thorough in your playthroughs, this game plays well enough that yes, I would recommend it for those people. For me, it felt short, though that being said, I completed it in 14 hours, whereas How Long to Beat suggests it would take 21 hours. I never play quicker than their times, so I assume those runs include the multiple runs to complete the 5 endings. But like I said, I thought it felt short, like they didn't do more with the other areas other than have you run in, complete your task, and get out. There was a lot of potential there. When I look at all the things I liked compared to all the things I disliked, I would score this game a 9 out of 14, 64%. Ultimately, I felt the game fell flat, but it had some really enjoyable parts too. Fighting mostly felt good, and the 2D and mech sections were usually done really well. But the world felt empty, the side characters were boring, the side quests felt pointless, and the map was truly frustrating. At least it was considerably better than Bayonetta. So, normally this is where I would show a bit of the boss fight, but I screwed up my recording. Just imagine some pew 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 and ARG! And you'll get the general idea. I take full blame on my mistake, but I'm not playing the game again just to get footage of the final fight. Because a full playthrough of this game requires multiple runs, I was prompted to save after the credits screen, so I didn't have a save to go back to so that I could fight the final boss again. And that's it. Other YouTubers thank their Patreon supporters here, but I won't do that to you, because I don't have a Patreon page. But if you want to chat with me, come visit me on Discord. I like hearing other people's opinions on games, so tell me yours. And hey, if you like the video, a like would be swell. And if you really enjoy my content, a subscribe would be gnarly. Do people still say gnarly? I'm aiming for 100 subs, and your help would be amazing. If you made it this far, a special thanks goes out to you. Without you, I'm just a weirdo talking into a microphone. I've made it a full year, so let's keep going and see where this little hobby of mine takes us. Thank you again, take care, and I hope to see you in the next video.